It started, as most things did in our relationship, with the vase. Not just any vase, mind you, a heavy ceramic monstrosity that my girlfriend Chloe had lovingly hand-thrown in one of her pottery classes. It was the color of a dull bruise, vaguely lopsided, and held a bouquet of wilting sunflowers with the enthusiasm of a condemned man. For the past week, it had sat on the small dining table in our Silver Lake apartment, a constant, silent accusation. The accusation wasn't about my lack of appreciation for her art. It was about the chipped rim, a tiny, almost imperceptible flaw that I had caused when I'd clumsily knocked it with a water glass. I hadn't said anything, hoping she wouldn't notice. She had. She said, her voice deceptively casual as she topped off her coffee at Intelligentsia Coffee, the blue and white tiles of the place seeming to amplify the tension between us. It's not about the vase, Leo. It was never just about the vase. It was about the fact that I hadn't told her. It's the lying, she continued, stirring a tempest in her mug. It's that you saw it happen and you just, hoped I'd be oblivious? I took a sip of my own coffee, the taste of a pricey single origin blend turning to ash in my mouth. I wanted to tell her that it was a stupid chip on a stupid vase, that my life was a chaotic mess of deadlines at the small ad agency I worked for, and a minor ceramic casualty hadn't registered as a top-tier crisis. But I knew that would only make things worse. I'm just saying, I didn't think it was a big deal. The Vasegate, as I morbidly dubbed it in my head, was just the latest in a string of what Chloe called my emotional evasions. Last month, it was forgetting to mention that I'd had lunch with my ex, a lunch that was purely professional, but which she'd discovered via tagged photo on social media. Before that, it was not telling her that my sister, Maya, was coming to stay with us for a week. In my defense, Maya's visits were less a planned event and more of a sudden whirlwind descent. This time, however, her arrival felt particularly ill-timed.
Maya was a force of nature, a freelance photographer who seemed to collect passport stamps and chaotic stories in equal measure. She was the kind of person who could convince a stranger to give her a ride across a desert, and they'd end up thanking her for the privilege. She and Chloe had a history that was as layered and complex as a milfoy. They had been friends once, best friends even, before Chloe and I were a thing. The narrative of how that friendship had fractured was a Rashomon-esque tale that changed with each telling, depending on who was the narrator.
Maya arrived on a Tuesday, a whirlwind of canvas bags and the scent of Nag Champa. She kissed me soundly on the cheek, her eyes sparkling with a familiar, mischievous light. "Leo," she'd said, her voice a low purr, "you look domesticated." She'd eyed the ficus in the corner, a plant Chloe had named Ferdinand, as if it were a symbol of my suburban surrender. Chloe had emerged from the bedroom, her smile tight. "Maya, you're here." The air in our small apartment had crackled with unspoken words.
The first few days were a masterclass in passive aggression. Chloe would organize the spice rack alphabetically. Maya would accidentally knock over the paprika, creating a cloud of red dust that settled on every surface. Chloe would suggest a quiet night in with a documentary. Maya would counter with an invitation to a warehouse party in the arts district. I found myself acting as a frantic, inept referee in a game where I didn't even know the rules. One afternoon, I came home to find them in the living room, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Maya was showing Chloe photos from her latest trip to Vietnam on her laptop. "And this," Maya said, her voice laced with a strange sort of triumph, "is Halong Day. You always said you wanted to go." Chloe's face was a carefully constructed mask of polite interest. "It's beautiful, Maya." I knew, with a sinking feeling that a trip to Vietnam had been something Chloe and I had talked about, a someday plan that now felt like a taunt.
Later that night, Chloe confronted me. She does it on purpose, she'd whispered, her voice a raw nerve in the darkness of our bedroom. She dangles these things in front of me, these things we used to talk about, to remind me of what I've given up. I didn't know how to respond. To me, it was just Maya being Maya, oblivious to the emotional shrapnel she left in her wake. But to Chloe, it was a calculated attack. The next day, I suggested we all go for a walk around Echo Park Lake. I thought the fresh air, the sight of the paddle boats, might dissipate some of the gloom. We stopped for coffee at a little place Chloe liked, Valerie Echo Park, and sat on a bench overlooking the water. Maya, ever the provocateur, brought up their old apartment, a shared ramshackle place in Frogtown they'd lived in years ago. Remember that leaky faucet, Chloe? The one that sounded like a dying bird? We were so broke we used to have to put a pot under it. Chloe's smile didn't reach her eyes. I remember.
The conversation meandered, a minefield of shared memories that I was not a part of. I felt like an intruder in my own life. Then Maya said it. You were so much more adventurous back then, before you met Leo. It wasn't an accusation, not exactly, but it landed with the force of one. Chloe's head snapped up, her eyes flashing. What's that supposed to mean?
Just that you've changed, Maya said, taking a deliberate sip of her latte. We both have. The implication was clear. Chloe's change was a downgrade. I haven't changed. I grew up. Something you seem to be allergic to. The dam had broken. The carefully constructed walls of politeness crumbled.
Oh, I'm sorry, Maya retorted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Is that what this is? Grown up? A perfectly curated apartment and a boyfriend who lies about chipping your precious pottery? The vase. Of course, it came back to the vase. I felt a hot flush of anger. Leave me out of this, I said, my voice tighter than I intended.
How can I? Maya shot back, turning her fiery gaze on me. You're the reason she's like this. So safe. So boring. Chloe stood up so abruptly, her chair scraped against the pavement. You know what, Maya? I'm done. I'm done with your little digs and your romanticized version of our past. You think I was happier when I was broke and miserable? You think that's what I want?
The climax arrived on a Thursday night. Chloe had been quiet all day, a simmering pot threatening to boil over. Maya had spent the afternoon developing photos in our makeshift darkroom in our bathroom. I was in the kitchen attempting to make a peace-offering dinner when Chloe emerged from the bedroom, her face pale. In her hand, she held a small silver locket. A locket I had never seen before. She said, I found this in Maya's things. It was ours. We bought it together at the Rose Bowl flea market the summer before everything. She opened the locket. Inside were two tiny faded photos. One of a much younger Chloe, her hair wild and unkempt. The other of Maya, grinning with a reckless abandon that seemed a world away from the woman in our living room. Maya appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. I was looking for that, she said softly. Chloe looked from the locket to Maya, then to me. The unspoken question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. What had happened that summer, and what did it have to do with me? I looked at the two women, the two most important people in my life, and saw a chasm between them that I had helped create. A chasm of unspoken truths and carefully curated histories. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if we could ever build a bridge across it. The aroma of burning garlic filled the silence. I had forgotten about dinner.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this Reddit story, drop a comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more wild Reddit stories like this one.